My parents and sister spent the entire dinner planning how she would redecorate my spare bedroom, never once asking if she could move in. I just nodded and poured more wine, knowing that in 3 days, I wouldn't even live here anymore. The exhaustion was a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders like a wet wool blanket. I had spent the last 3 weeks battling a relentless viral infection that had left me drained, pale, and thinner than I had been in years. My voice was still raspy, my energy reserves hovering near zero, and all I wanted was silence. I wanted to curl up on my sofa with a cup of tea and stare at the wall until my brain stopped buzzing. Instead, I was hosting a 4-course dinner. "Sophie, this roast is a little dry," Valentina said, pushing a piece of beef around her plate with her fork. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were scanning the crown molding of my dining room, critical and sharp. "You really should have marinated it longer. I told you that last time." "I've been sick, Mom," I rasped, taking a sip of water to soothe my throat. I barely had energy to cook at all. "Well, if you're going to host, do it right," Grayson chimed in from the head of the table, my seat technically, but he always usurped it the moment he walked through the door. He adjusted his silk tie, his face flushed with the expensive wine I had poured him. "Excuses don't put a good meal on the table, Sophie. You know that." I gripped the stem of my glass, my knuckles turning white. I was 32 years old. I was a senior architect at one of the city's most respected firms. I managed multi-million-dollar budgets and led teams of 20 people. Yet, in this room, under the gaze of Grayson and Valentina, I was still the disappointment. The workhorse. The one who wasn't Allison. Speaking of Allison, her chair was empty. She was 45 minutes late. Again. "She's just terrified, poor thing," Valentina sighed, finally looking at me with an expression that was supposed to be sympathy but felt more like calculation. "She's been through so much this week. The landlord was absolute trash to her. Evicting her over a simple misunderstanding? It's criminal." I knew for a fact the misunderstanding was 4 months of unpaid rent while Allison spent her paycheck on a trip to Chelum, but I bit my tongue. "I'm sure she'll figure it out," I said neutrally. Grayson cleared his throat, the sound echoing with authority. "That's actually what we need to discuss, Sophie. We've been talking, and we've found a solution that works for everyone." My stomach dropped. The air in the room seemed to freeze. I looked from my father's stern, expectant face to my mother's feigned casualness. "A solution to what?" I asked, though I already knew. I could feel the trap snapping shut before they even spoke the words. "Allison can't stay in that motel anymore," Valentina said, waving her hand as if the motel were a war zone and not a 4-star suite Grayson was paying for. "She needs stability. She needs family. And you have this excessive amount of space." "She's moving in," Grayson stated. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was a mandate delivered from the bench. "Just until she gets back on her feet. 6 months, maybe a year. We'll move her things in on Saturday." I stared at them. The betrayal wasn't that they were asking. It was that they weren't asking at all. They were invading. They looked at my sanctuary, the home I had worked 80-hour weeks to afford, the quiet space I needed to heal, and they saw nothing but a resource to be harvested for their golden child. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. For a moment, the room spun. My vision blurred at the edges, a combination of my lingering illness and the sheer, unadulterated rage spiking my blood pressure. I looked at the walls of my apartment, my beautiful, curated apartment in the city center. I loved this place. I loved the floor-to-ceiling windows. I loved the way the morning light hit the kitchen island. But more than the aesthetics, I loved that it was mine. It was the one place where I didn't have to be Sophie the reliable or Sophie the backup plan. "Saturday," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "That's in 4 days." "Ideally, we'd do it Friday, but Grayson has a golf tournament," Valentina said, pulling a small notebook out of her purse. She opened it, and I saw a crude sketch of my apartment floor plan. She had already drawn furniture arrangements. "Now, obviously, your home office will have to go. Allison needs a space for her creative process. You can move your computer to the corner of the living room, or maybe the kitchen table. Her creative process, I said, the words tasting like ash. You mean her Instagram videos? She is building a brand, Sophie, Grayson snapped, his fork clattering against the china. Don't be jealous just because she's pursuing the arts while you're stuck in a corporate grind. You shoo. LD be supporting her. I looked down at my plate. Jealous? They thought I was jealous of a 28-year-old woman who had never paid a utility bill in her life. I use my office for work, Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I work from home 3 days a week. You can work from anywhere, Valentina dismissed, making a note in her book. Allison needs natural light. The second bedroom is perfect. We'll need to clear out that guest bed, though. She has her own California king she wants to bring. It's imperative she sleeps well. They continued to talk over me, dissecting my life, rearranging my furniture, and cannibalizing my schedule. They discussed how I would need to keep the noise down in the mornings because Allison wasn't a morning person. They mentioned that I should probably upgrade my internet package to the highest tier to support her streaming. I sat there feeling the heat rise up my neck. I felt like a ghost in my own home. They didn't see me. They never had. To Grayson and Valentina, I was just infrastructure. I was the road Allison drove on, the bridge she crossed, the roof over her head. I was necessary, but ultimately invisible. A wave of nausea hit me, but as I took another sip of water, a cold, hard clarity washed over it. They were so confident, so arrogant in their assumption that I was a permanent fixture, an unmoving object that they could build their lives around. They assumed that because I was the good daughter, the responsible one, I would never deviate from the script. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I looked at the calendar on the wall behind Grayson's head. Today was Tuesday, the 24th. My lease ended on Friday, the 27th. I wasn't the owner of this apartment. I was a tenant. And 3 months ago, when my landlord told me he was selling the unit and I had to vacate, I hadn't told them. I hadn't told anyone. I had quietly spent my weekends hunting, signing papers, and packing boxes in the dead of night, stacking them in a storage unit they knew nothing about. So, Valentina said, looking up from her notebook with a bright, predatory smile. We'll bring the movers at 9:00 a.m. on Saturday. You'll be here to let them in. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had criticized my cooking while I was sick, who was planning to evict me from my own office to make room for her favorite daughter's vanity projects. I forced a smile. It felt tight and foreign on my face. Sure, I said softly, I'll be here. I wouldn't be here. By Saturday morning, I would be waking up in a townhome on the other side of the city, under a name they didn't know, with a phone number they didn't have. To understand why this moment was so pivotal, you have to understand the decade of servitude that led up to it. This wasn't the first time I was expected to catch Allison. When Allison was 19 and got arrested for shoplifting sunglasses she could absolutely afford, I was the one who left a client meeting to bail her out because Mom and Dad couldn't bear the shame of walking into a police station. I paid the lawyer. I never got paid back. When Allison was 22 and decided to move to New York to become a model, I was the one who co-signed the apartment. When she bilayed 3 months later because the city energy was toxic, I was the one stuck with the lease break fee, $6,000. Grayson told me it was family duty to handle it. I had spent my entire adult life trying to buy their love with compliance. I thought if I was just successful enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, they would finally look at me with the same adoration they showered on Allison. But tonight, listening to them casually dismantle my sanctuary, I realized the currency I was paying with had no value to them. The front door unlocked. I had given Allison a key for emergencies, a mistake I had regretted almost instantly. Hello, oh my God, the traffic was insane. Allison breezed into the dining room. She was a whirlwind of designer labels and chaotic energy. She was wearing a coat that cost more than my first car, and she was holding a venti iced coffee, despite being 45 minutes late for a dinner. She didn't apologize. Allison never apologized. She just explained why the universe had conspired against her. "Sophie, babe, you look tired," she said, dropping her oversized handbag onto the table right next to the gravy boat. She leaned in to air kiss my cheek, smelling of expensive vanilla perfume and entitlement. "You really need to try that collagen supplement I told you about. It works wonders for dark circles." "Hi, Allison," I said, my voice flat. "Did you tell her?" Allison asked, turning immediately to Valentina, her eyes wide and sparkling with faux innocence. "About the arrangement." "We did," Valentina cooed, reaching out to squeeze Allison's hand. "She's thrilled to have you." Allison beamed at me, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was the SM. Isle of a shark that had just spotted a wounded seal. "It's going to be so fun, soft, like a sleepover, but like for a few months. I was thinking we could repaint the guest room. That beige is just so depressing. I need sage, or maybe a soft terracotta, to stimulate the chakras." She walked around the table, trailing her hand along the back of my chair. "And I was thinking, since you're at work all day, I could use the living room for my yoga live streams. I need quiet from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you could, not run the dishwasher or have loud calls during that time, that would be super helpful." She hadn't even moved in yet, and she was already setting rules. She was already claiming territory. "And," she continued, pausing to inspect a painting on my wall with a frown, "I'm going to need closet space. A lot of it. Maybe we can move your winter coats to storage. I have a lot of gowns coming in for the gala season." Grayson chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "See, she's got a vision. This is going to be good for you, Sophie. Liven up this place. It's too sterile anyway." I looked at Allison. She was 28, perfectly manicured, glowing with health and vitality, standing there demanding I shrink my life to fit her ego. She had never worked a real 40-hour week in her life. She floated from project to project, funded by Grayson's retirement accounts and my emotional labor. There was something different about her tonight, though. Beneath the bubbly exterior, there was a sharpness, a desperation. She kept checking her phone. She was tapping her foot frantically. "So the movers come Saturday?" Allison asked, her voice tight. "We can't do earlier, tomorrow." "Saturday is the earliest we could book, sweetie," Valentina said. "Why? Is the motel that bad?" "It's fine," Allison snapped too quickly. I want to get settled. I have things arriving." I narrowed my eyes. Things arriving, or people looking for her. It didn't matter. Let her rush. Let her panic. Let them all plan their grand invasion. "Saturday is fine," I said, standing up to clear the plates. My legs felt shaky, but my mind was steel. "Saturday is perfect." I carried the plates to the kitchen, the sound of their laughter following me. They were toasting to the new arrangement, toasting to Allison's comfort and my submission. I set the plates in the sink and looked at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. I looked tired. I looked sick. But for the first time in my life, I didn't look like a victim. I walked over to the calendar on the fridge, picked up a red marker, and drew a big circle around Saturday. "Don't worry," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "I'll be ready." The next 3 days were a masterclass in deception. I went to work as usual, or at least, that's what I told my mother when she called to ask if I could pick up dry cleaning for Allison on my way home. "I can't, Mom," I said, wedging my phone between my shoulder and ear as I taped up the final box of my personal library. "I have a late meeting." "Always the job," she sighed, the disappointment palpable even through the cellular connection. "Fine, I'll do it. Just make sure the guest room is cleared out by Friday night. Allison wants to come over early Saturday to supervise the movers." "It'll be clear," I promised. It wasn't a lie. In reality, I had taken 3 days of PTO. While my family thought I was slaving away at the firm, I was orchestrating a military-grade extraction of my life. I had hired a premium moving service, the kind that packs, moves, and unpacks for you, specifically because they were discreet and fast. By Thursday afternoon, my current apartment was a hollow shell. The art was off the walls, leaving ghost-like rectangles of lighter paint. The rugs were rolled. My clothes were gone. The only things remaining were the heavy furniture pieces I didn't want, the dining table Grayson had picked out but I had paid for, and the oversized sectional sofa Valentina insisted was chic, but was actually incredibly uncomfortable. I left them. I wanted a fresh start. I didn't want a single molecule of their influence in my new life. I spent Friday morning doing a final walkthrough with my landlord, Mr. Henderson. He was a kind, older man who had always liked me. "I'm sorry to lose you, Sophie," he said, inspecting the pristine condition of the walls. "New tenants move in Monday, a nice young couple." "Mr. Henderson," I said, handing him my keys. "My family, they might come by tomorrow. They're under the impression I still live here. It's a complicated situation." He raised an eyebrow, taking the keys. "I see. Do you want me to tell them where you went?" "No," I said firmly. "If they ask, you don't know. You just know my lease was up and I vacated." "Understood," he nodded, pocketing the keys. "Good luck, Sophie." I walked out of that building for the last time at 11:00 a.m. on Friday. I got into my car and drove across the city, crossing the river to a neighborhood that was quieter, greener, and crucially, 45 minutes away from my parents' house. My new apartment was a sanctuary. It was a loft conversion in an old industrial building, exposed brick, high beams, and a security system that required a fob, a code, and a smile to get past the concierge. I had bought it 6 months ago. I had closed on it while Allison was finding herself in Bali. I had renovated it while my parents were lecturing me about not visiting enough. As I unpacked my kettle in my new, sun-drenched kitchen, a wave of anxiety tried to crest in my chest. I knew what was coming. I knew the storm that would break tomorrow morning. But for the first time, I wasn't standing in the rain without an umbrella. I was inside, behind a locked door, watching the clouds gather from a safe distance. That evening, as I sat on my new velvet sofa, dark emerald, exactly what I wanted, I opened my laptop. Allison's desperation at dinner had stuck with me. "I have things arriving." It felt too frantic for just a simple eviction. I logged into the county clerk's public records database. It was a tool I used often for work when vetting contractors, but tonight, I typed in Allison Miller. Nothing recent in criminal. I switched to civil. My breath hitched. There it was, a filing from 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't just an eviction notice. It was a lawsuit for damages. Plaintiff, the agonizingly trendy Metroloft Properties. Defendant, Allison Miller. Claim, unpaid rent 4 months, breach of lease and destruction of property. Amount seeking, $24,500. I clicked deeper into the filing. The description of damages was horrifying. Water damage due to negligence, removal of load-bearing fixtures, and unauthorized subletting to third parties resulting in noise complaints and police presence. She hadn't just lost her apartment. She had destroyed it, and she was being sued for $24,000. No wonder she needed to disappear into my guest room. She needed a hideout, not a home. Saturday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. I woke up at 8:00 a.m., made coffee, and sat on my balcony. The air was crisp. My phone sat on the bistro table, face up, silent. At 8:58 a.m., the silence broke. "Incoming call, Mom." I let it ring. "Incoming call, Dad." I let it ring. "Incoming call, Allison." I took a sip of my coffee, watching a bird land on the railing. I waited. I wanted them to have the full experience. I wanted them to try the key. I wanted them to jiggle the handle. I wanted them to realize the doorman wouldn't let them up because I wasn't on the resident list anymore. At 9:15 a.m., my phone was vibrating so constantly it was dancing across the table. 17 missed calls. I finally picked up on the 18th attempt. It was Grayson. "Where the hell are you?" he roared. There was no greeting. No hello, just pure, unadulterated fury. Good morning, Dad, I said, my voice calm, steady. I'm having coffee. Why? Why? He was sputtering. I could hear the background noise, the beep of a moving truck, the murmuring of confused movers, and Allison's high-pitched shrieking. We are at your apartment. The key doesn't work. The doorman says you don't live here. He says the unit is empty. What kind of sick joke is this, Sophie? It's not a joke, I said, leaning back in my chair. The doorman is right, I don't live there. What do you mean you don't live there? Valentina's voice screamed into the receiver. She must have snatched the phone from him. We were just there Tuesday. We had dinner. Yes, I said, and my lease ended yesterday. I moved out. There was a silence on the other end that was so profound I thought the call had dropped. Then the explosion happened. You knew, Valentina shrieked. You knew on Tuesday, when we were planning the room, when Allison was measuring the windows. I knew, I confirmed. I just chose not to interrupt you. You all seemed so excited about your plans for my space. I didn't want to ruin the mood. Where are you? Grayson barked, his voice back on the line. Give me the address. Now, the movers are charging us by the hour. We need to redirect the truck. No, I said. Excuse me. No, I repeated. You aren't redirecting anything to me. Allison isn't moving in with me. I don't have a guest room for her. I have a one-bedroom apartment, and I'm the only one living in it. Sophie Miller, Grayson bellowed. You listen to me. Your sister is on the street. She has a truck full of furniture and nowhere to go. You will give me your address this instant, or so help me God. Or what, Dad? I cut him off, my voice turning icy. You'll ground me. You'll cut me out of the will I'm not in anyway. I'm 32. I pay my own bills. I built my own career. You have no leverage here. Sophie, it was Allison now, sobbing hysterically. How could you do this to me? I have nowhere to go. My life is falling apart, and you're playing games. You're so selfish. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous? I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Allison, you're 28 and you're homeless because you think rent is optional. I'm not jealous. I'm tired. I'm done being your safety net. We are coming to find you, Grayson threatened, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. I will call your office. I will call every friend you have. You cannot hide from your family. I'm not hiding, Dad, I said. I'm just finally closing the door. Figure it out. You're the parents. Parent her. I hung up. Then I blocked all 3 of their numbers. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the sheer, intoxicating realization that I had actually done it. I had said no. But I knew it wasn't over. Grayson was a lawyer, albeit retired. He didn't take defeat lying down. He viewed resistance as a challenge to be litigated into submission. The silence lasted exactly 4 hours. They couldn't call me, so they went nuclear. At 1:00 p.m., I received a notification from LinkedIn. Grayson had posted a status, tagging me. Urgent, has anyone seen my daughter, Sophie Miller? She is experiencing a mental health crisis and has disappeared. We are very worried. Please contact us if you know her whereabouts. My jaw dropped. He was trying to humiliate me into compliance. He was weaponizing my professional network. Within minutes, I had texts from 2 coworkers and an email from my boss, Sarah. Sophie, I saw your dad's post. Is everything okay? Do you need us to call someone? I immediately called Sarah. Sarah, I am completely fine. I am safe. My parents are? Well, I refused to let my sister move in with me, and they are trying to force contact. I'm so sorry he dragged the firm into this. Oh God, Sarah sighed, sounding relieved. Families, okay. Do you want me to have it block his emails? Please, I said, and if he calls the office, I'm not there. Done. Take care of yourself, Sophie. I hung up, fury replacing the earlier anxiety. They were trying to destroy my reputation because I wouldn't be their doormat. I reported the LinkedIn post for harassment and false information, but the damage was done. People had seen it. Then came the emails. Since I had blocked their numbers, they flooded my inbox. From Valentina subject, you are killing your father, Sophie. Your father is having chest pains. The stress you are causing is going to give him a heart attack. Allison is in a hotel that costs $300 a night. You will reimburse us for this. We know you're in the city. We will find you. From Allison's subject, please read soft, please. I'm sorry I yelled. I'm just scared. The people from the old apartment are chasing me. I need a place to hide. Just for a week. Please, they're crazy. The people from the old apartment, the lawsuit. I realized then that this wasn't just about a place to sleep. Allison was running from a legal process server. If she moved in with me, I would be the one dealing with the bailiffs. I would be the one having my door pounded on at 6 a.m. I needed to end this. Ignoring them wasn't working. It was only making them escalate. I needed to drop a bomb so big that they would be too busy doing damage control to chase me. I went back to the civil court database. I downloaded the full PDF of the complaint against Allison. I also did a little more digging. I found Allison's public Venmo history. It was public, and it was damning. Transactions from the last 4 months. VIP table at Club Tao, $1,200 Bali trip deposit, $800 spiritual cleanse retreat, $2,500. She had spent thousands of dollars while stiffing her landlord. I compiled everything into a single PDF document. The lawsuit, the list of damages, the Venmo screenshots showing her lavish spending while claiming poverty. I composed an email. I addressed it to Grayson and Valentina, but I CC'd Aunt Carol, Grayson's sister, the family gossip, and the one person Grayson feared, because she held the purse strings to the larger family trust that Grayson supplemented his retirement with. Subject: the truth about Allison's eviction. Mom, Dad. Stop contacting my workplace. Stop posting lies about me on social media. I am not having a mental breakdown. I am simply enforcing a boundary. You claim Allison was evicted due to a misunderstanding. Attached is the civil lawsuit filed against her 2 weeks ago. She is being sued for $24,500 for unpaid rent and significant property damage, including unauthorized removal of fixtures. You also claim she has no money. Attached are her public transaction records showing over $5,000 in luxury spending during the months she refused to pay rent. I will not house someone who destroys property and commits financial fraud. If you continue to harass me or my employer, I will forward this document to the rest of the family and file a restraining order. Do not contact me again until you are ready to apologize. Sophie. I hit send. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I had just declared war. Bringing Aunt Carol into it was the nuclear option. Carol was a rigid, old-money matriarch who despised scandal and tackiness. Allison getting sued for trashing an apartment was the definition of tacky. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It wasn't from my parents, it was from Aunt Carol. Reply all, Grayson, Valentina. Is this true? Is this why you asked me for a bridge loan last week? Explain yourselves immediately. I sat back, letting out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 20 years. The siege on my fortress had broken. They had to turn their guns around to defend their own rear. But I knew my parents. They wouldn't just apologize. They would be cornered animals now, and a cornered animal bites. The summons came less than 24 hours after my email. It wasn't a text or a digital notification. It was a courier-delivered envelope, heavy cream cardstock with a familiar, terrifyingly elegant embossing. Aunt Carol requests your presence at the Miller family quarterly dinner. Sunday, 6:00 p.m., the estate. Usually, these dinners were social obligations I dreaded, stiff affairs where we ate overly salted roast chicken and pretended to be a functional dynasty. But this time, the subtext was screaming. Aunt Carol, the de facto matriarch and the holder of the family trust that supplemented my father's retirement lifestyle, had called court into session. I spent the entire Sunday morning in a state of vibrating anxiety. I paced the length of my new, beautiful living room, the sunlight streaming through the industrial windows doing little to warm the chill in my bones. I almost didn't go. I almost stayed in my fortress, locked the door, and let them tear each other apart without me. But if I didn't go, the narrative would be theirs to write. They would paint me as the unstable, cruel sister who abandoned her family in a time of need. I had to face them. I had to finish what I started. I dressed like I was going to a board meeting, a sharp black blazer, tailored trousers, and heels that clicked with authority against the pavement. I drove to the estate, Carol's sprawling colonial home in the wealthy suburbs, in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just me and the hum of the engine, steeling myself for the impact. When I pulled into the circular driveway, my parents' Lexus was already there. So was Allison's convertible, the one she couldn't afford to put gas in last month. I walked up the stone steps, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my face composed into a mask of cool detachment. I rang the bell. The housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, opened the door. "Miss Sophie," she said, her voice hushed. "There in the drawing room, Mrs. Van der Hoven is, waiting." I walked down the long hallway, the sound of raised voices growing louder with every step. Completely unreasonable reaction. It was my mother, Valentina. Her voice was shrill, bordering on hysteria. "She's having a breakdown, Carol. That email was a fabrication." "Is it?" Carol's voice was lower, distinct, and cut through the noise like a serrated knife. "Because the court documents look quite authentic to me, Valentina." I stepped into the room. The silence that fell was immediate and heavy. Grayson was standing by the fireplace, a scotch in his hand, looking flushed and angry. Valentina was seated on the edge of a velvet armchair, wringing a handkerchief. Allison was curled up on the sofa, looking small and fragile, wearing oversized sweats, a calculated costume change from the designer gear she usually flaunted. And there was Aunt Carol, sitting straight-backed in her high chair, the printed PDF of my email resting on the coffee table in front of her like a verdict. "She's here," Allison whispered, pointing a trembling finger at me. "The traitor." "Sophie," Grayson barked, taking a step toward me. He looked imposing, used to commanding courtrooms and dining tables alike. "You have a lot of nerve showing your face after the filth you sent to your aunt." "I sent the truth," I said, my voice steady. I didn't step back. I walked further into the room, claiming my space. "And I see you're all here trying to spin it before I arrived." "We are trying to protect the family name," Valentina snapped, standing up. "You aired our dirty laundry, Sophie. You humiliated your sister." "Allison humiliated herself when she stopped paying her rent and trashed a rented property," I countered, looking directly at my sister. She flinched. "I just refused to let her bring that chaos into my home." "It was a mistake," Allison wailed, the tears starting on cue. "The landlord hated me. He had it out for me. I didn't trash it, I was improving it. And the money, I needed that for my mental health. You don't understand pressure, Sophie. You're a robot. You just work and save and judge." "Lee." "Enough," Carol said. She didn't shout. She didn't have to. The word simply terminated the conversation. Carol picked up the stack of papers. She put on her reading glasses, the movement slow and deliberate. "Grayson," she said, turning to my father. "Last week, you asked me for a $50,000 advance on your yearly distribution from the trust. You told me it was for emergency medical expenses related to your heart." The room went deadly silent. I looked at my father. He paled, the flush draining from his cheeks instantly. Grayson stammered. "I have had palpitations, Carol, the stress." "But you intended to use that money to pay off Allison's lawsuit, didn't you?" Carol asked, her eyes boring into him. "You intended to bail her out again and lie to me about where the money went." "We couldn't let her have a judgment on her record," Valentina cried out, moving to her husband's side. "She's a child. She made a mistake. We have to help her." "She is 28 years old," I interrupted, the anger finally boiling over. "She is not a child, and you aren't helping her, you're crippling her. You've spent my entire life telling me I have to be the adult so she can play house. You tried to force her into my home, my sanctuary, because you didn't want to deal with the consequences of your own parenting. How dare you, Grayson hissed. We gave you everything. We paid for your college. I paid for my college, I cut him off. I had scholarships and I worked 3 jobs. You paid for Allison's college, all 3 of them, none of which she finished. Sophie is right. The words hung in the air. We all turned to look at Carol. I have enabled this as much as you have, Carol said, standing up. She looked tired but resolute. I have signed the checks. I have covered the emergencies. I have bought the cars. She looked at Allison, who was staring back with wide, terrified eyes. The party is over, Carol said softly. Allison, I am not paying your legal fees. I am not paying your judgment. And Grayson, I am freezing your distribution from the trust pending a full audit of your finances. If I find you have been funneling family money into Allison's debts while lying to me, I will petition to have you removed as a beneficiary entirely. Carol, Grayson gasped, dropping his glass. It shattered on the hearth, the sound exploding like a gunshot. You can't do that, that's my money. It was our father's money, Carol corrected him coldly. Left to us to maintain the family legacy, not to fund a lifestyle of delusion. She turned to me, her expression softened just a fraction. Sophie, she said, I apologize. I didn't know they were trying to force her into your home. I didn't know you had moved. I had to, I said, feeling tears prick the corners of my eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. They wouldn't take no for an answer. Well, Carol said, looking back at the trio of stunned, silent figures. They will now. She turned to the door. Dinner is canceled. I suggest you all leave. Sophie, please stay. I'd like to have a drink with you. Alone. The humiliation was absolute. Grayson stood amidst the shards of his Scotch glass, his mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. Valentina was weeping silently, clutching Allison, who looked, for the first time in her life, like she realized no one was coming to save her. They left. They shuffled out of the drawing room like ghosts, stripped of their bluster, stripped of their power. I heard the front door close, and the heavy silence of the house rushed back in. But this time it wasn't heavy. It was light. It was the weight of a burden finally, mercifully, dropped. The fallout was swift and brutal. A domino effect of reality crashing down on a family that had lived in fantasy for too long. Without Carol's money, Grayson and Valentina couldn't pay Allison's settlement. The lawsuit went to court. Allison, forced to stand before a judge without a high-priced lawyer to hide behind, lost. The judgment was harsh, $24,500 plus legal fees. Her wages were garnished, which meant she actually had to get a job to have wages to garnish. She ended up working as a receptionist at a dental office. It wasn't the creative lifestyle consulting she had dreamed of, and she complained about it incessantly on social media until her boss saw it and fired her, leading to a cycle of short-term employments that finally, painfully, taught her the value of $1. Grayson and Valentina took the hardest hit. The audit Carol ordered revealed years of financial mismanagement. They weren't destitute, but the unlimited well had run dry. They had to downsize. They sold the family home, the one where I had always felt like a guest, and moved into a modest 2-bedroom condo. There was no room for Allison there, either. For the first time, they were forced to live within their means. The golf club membership was canceled. The galas stopped. The why became, simply, retired people on a budget. And me. I was sitting on my balcony in my new apartment, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in hues of violet and gold. It had been 3 months since the showdown at Carol's estate. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Allison since that day. I knew, eventually, I might unblock them. I might answer a Christmas card. But the relationship we had, the parasite and the host, was dead. If we ever built something new, it would be on my terms, on my turf, and with boundaries made of reinforced steel. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Aunt Carol. Carol, I'm reviewing the trust restructuring. I've decided to appoint you as the secondary trustee. I need someone with a head for numbers and a spine. Dinner Thursday to discuss." I smiled, a real genuine smile that reached my eyes. "Me, I'd love to. I'll bring the wine." I put the phone down and looked around my apartment. It was quiet. The only sound was the hum of the city below and the soft jazz playing from my speakers. There were no boxes to pack, no secrets to keep, no impending invasions to fear. The doorbell rang. I didn't jump, I didn't panic. I walked to the door and checked the monitor. It was the delivery guy with my Thai food. I opened the door, took the food, and thanked him. As I locked the deadbolt, a solid, heavy thunk that echoed with finality, I realized I had gotten exactly what I wanted. I wasn't just in a new apartment. I was in a new life. And for the first time, every single square inch of it belonged to me.